Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Welcome to Ask Rob and Rob, where every week we reduce the amount of property-related uncertainty in the world by answering your questions. Normally 2 questions. Today, just the one, but don't fear, it's a good one. So we'll hear that in just a sec after a quick reminder of how you can send in a question of your own.
Yes, it remains very simple. You can call in on 013 808 0035, or you can contact us via our website, propertyhub.net/ask. Now, as Rob said already, we've only got one question, but lots of you have asked this question and lots of you have emailed in, so we're dedicating a full Ask episode to it. But we've given the honour to Vicky to ask the question for so many of you.
Hey Rob and Rob, it's Vicky from Plymouth. Thanks so much for the podcast and all the free content you guys put out. It's been so useful. My question is about HS2. Now that Boris Johnson is in power, there's loads of talk about it all changing. I've heard it's going ahead, it's over budget, it's not going ahead, it's only going to service the north, etc, etc. I'd be really interested to know what your thoughts are on it all and how you see it affecting places like Manchester, Liverpool and Leeds. Thanks so much.
It's been causing a stir, this one, Rob, hasn't it?
It has. We've had so many questions about this. The announcements that have come out seem to have ruffled a few feathers. But I know you've been keeping an eye on it and you've got some opinions on this.
So for those who don't know, HS2 is a high-speed rail link that is being built. The first line goes up from London to Birmingham, and then it splits into 2 lines. One goes to Leeds and one goes to Manchester. And that will cut down journey times dramatically. But the cost is dramatic as well. Billions upon billions of pounds, and the original budget has been absolutely dwarfed, and now there's talk that this project could run to 100 billion in cost, which is more than double its original budget. So, understandably, this project has been controversial. There are some people who are fully behind it. I think Rob and I are fans of high-speed rail, at least I am. I'm a bit of a geek. But there are plenty of people who are saying, wait a minute, this is a waste of money. It's not going to bring enough benefits to justify the cost. Now, like Rob and I, the majority of property investors are for HS2, particularly if they are investing in the north, because it is seen that HS2 in the north is a huge benefit and will really help cities like Leeds and Manchester and surrounding cities. They're not exclusively the only places getting HS2, but Manchester and Leeds in particular and other stations are really going to benefit from this project. So now it's all up in the air. There's talk of this being scrapped. Well, that was what originally came out. But actually, again, like so often, when you look into the headlines and look at the actual detail, you start to build a more interesting picture. They are talking about making big changes to HS2, and they do want to reduce costs. But what I find fascinating is a few days after the original announcement, they started to leak information that actually the project could be reversed, and HS2, the first phase, will be done in the north. So the line from Birmingham to Leeds and Manchester would be prioritised, and then eventually getting onto the line between Birmingham and London. Now this adds up. This makes sense, because a week before this HS2 announcement, Boris Johnson had talked about his desire for a high-speed line to be built between Manchester and Leeds. So if you add the 2 together, what you have is a loop. You have a line between Birmingham up to Manchester and Leeds, and then a line across between Manchester and Leeds, which would create a high-speed loop in a key area of the country, massively benefiting the north. So, what does this mean for property investors? Well, if HS2 carries on as normal, then great, we continue as planned, and eventually we'll get high-speed HS2 up in the north. But it's quite a long way away. But if they actually do cut costs, reverse this, and start with Birmingham, Leeds and Manchester, I'd actually say not only is this something to worry about, but this is fantastic news.
And what if the whole thing gets scrapped and doesn't happen at all? Well, that seems unlikely. They're already over £1 billion into this. Yes, if it's going to run to 100 billion, that's a drop in the ocean, and it'd be better to cut and run if actually it's going to bring no benefit at all. But the sunk cost fallacy is real, and thousands of people are employed on this project, so it would be a very bad look if they were just to completely pull the plug. Even if that does happen, there does seem to be a reasonable commitment to high-speed rail in the north, which, let's face it, is where it's needed. We've complained on the podcast so many times before about how dreadful the transport links are between Manchester and Leeds, Manchester and Liverpool, and others. So even if the HS2 project doesn't go ahead, it seems likely that another project that targets those locations would go ahead, because it seems now that government has recognised the need for it. But we'll just have to wait for an announcement to see what actually does end up happening. And if it's anything like the trains that they're announcing things about, it'll happen later than it should, then 3 will come along at once. But in the meantime, like with so many things, it's not really worth worrying about because there's nothing you can do about it. But at the same time, there's no point getting too excited about things that are announced because they can always get cancelled, they can always change. So always best to just do what you need to do and focus on what you can control. What we can control is bringing you 2 awesome podcasts every week. So Ask Rob and Rob will be back next Tuesday answering more of your questions. And before then, we'll see you on Thursday for the Property Podcast. Until then, have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.